Hey everybody, Andrew2 here, and just wanted to come with you a video today where we are going to talk about some of the things I think that 11th Hour Games did correctly when it came to the patch notes. A lot of things were shooken up, mainly a lot of the overperforming builds, a lot of the ward conversion got reduced, and some abilities got hit pretty heavily with some nerfs. But I just wanted to go through like a couple of things that I noticed that were very, very interesting. And then at the end of it, we're going to take a look at all of the new uniques that have been brought to light and sort of take a look at them, see what they could potentially fill, what builds they could potentially be in, different things like that. So I just wanted to run through kind of all of the different little things that I noticed that were actually really good, really good buffs. And for starters, we're going to go off with a lot of the Sentinel stuff because that's what I mainly play. That's what I really enjoy playing. So first and foremost, we're going to go through the Forge Guard. Obviously, Forge Guard was a sort of a memed upon kind of like a build and a mastery, just because like there weren't too many things in it that really complemented its playstyle. According to a couple of websites, there was like a 1.5% build guides that were created for the builds out of every single type of class in mastery. So it's good to know that they are interested in bringing this build sort of to the forefront, make it a little bit fresher, change things about it that weren't working previously, and potentially add new uniques that really help kind of build that fundamental Forge Guard playstyle. So we're going to go through here and just take a quick peek at the Forge Guard first. Second Mastery bonus gives 10% armor instead of 3%, so that's a pretty massive buff. Forge Guard has this ability where when you get attacked, you get armor based off of your current armor, I believe. Before it was a 3%, and it didn't have a stack limit, but that didn't really matter because in 10 seconds, if you're, you can't take 100 hits in 10 seconds. It'd be very difficult to do that. So it's good to know that they increased that by 10%. Unflinching gets 100 stun avoidance from 40, so it's also great for that. It gets more health per point. Crushing Blows is very nice as well. Shield Breaker was one of those abilities that really added a lot of extra mana to like hammer throw if you were doing that. And now it's reduced by half, so you would need, I think there's 6 points total in it, and that would make it a 36 increased mana cost for your cast. Now it's only 18, which is very much manageable, considering that there's some spells that will be using, more mana regeneration than other things like that. So Steel Aegis is very nice as well. Fresh from the Forge has been replaced, so it grants like melee damage instead, which is actually kind of cool. Smelter's Wrath is that ability that's that channeled ability. It's very clunky, but I think it'll work pretty well with the no channeling and things like that, since you'll be able to recover mana, which will in turn, I think, make the build shine. Let's see, a couple more here. Iron Reflexes is very good. Reduced bonus damage from critical strikes, which is wonderful, considering that there weren't too many things on the tree that granted you like anything that reduces damage. Let's see, minion health has been reduced, but it grants a 10% chance per point to summon a single shield from Ring of Shields when you block. We can trigger up to 3 times every 6 seconds, which is actually pretty massive because Ring of Shields, I didn't use it in any sort of builds, but the Ring of Shields would rotate around you and it would block enemy ranged attacks, which is actually pretty cool because there's, if you've been playing the game, you know that there's a lot of like Wengari axe throwers that show up and just start hucking axes at you. So it's kind of cool to know that like we'll be able to use Ring of Shields a little bit more liberally and not have to worry too much about on keeping it on that higher cooldown. Thornmail is now 1% is 5% damage reflected per 1% armor mitigation, which is really kind of nice. You can kind of build a Thornsy kind of a build now with that. Flawless Defender gives 25 more armor, and but it no longer has a 3% non-scaling block chance, which I think is kind of a nerf, but it's going to give a little bit more like fluidity. There were a lot of people in Sentinel that were taking all of the non-scaling 3% block chance just to increase their block chance by that much more with only 1 point. So this will hopefully deter people from doing that sort of a thing. I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing, but it will be something that will impact the longevity of the game and won't make it so necessary to always choose that sort of a thing. So, Folded Steel is nice. Increased duration for forged weapons. And the non-scaling bonus of +2 max forged weapons has been moved to a threshold bonus. So I'm assuming it'll be 10%. I'm assuming it'll be 5 points into this skill, and then you'll get your +2 max forged weapons. So that'll require a little bit more investment into these sorts of things. And yeah, so that's just kind of like the Forge Guard, right? Forge Guard got a huge buff, I think, this patch. Void Knight, on the other hand, got a pretty big nerf. This first one here says, first mastery bonus now grants 1% more melee void damage per 3 vitality, previously 75%. So what that means is you would have to get, if you're at 75 vitality, I believe you're sitting at like 15% more void damage. Which is kind of insane considering that 75% increased void melee damage basically was like the entire idea behind the Void Knight, right? The Void Knight is the only class in Last Epoch right now that has main void abilities. A lot of people have been asking for a lot of different other types of like void influences, maybe like a void into an acolyte tree or something like that, but it's gonna shake things up. I'm excited to see what builds come out for it. Just other things like that. I feel like there will be a lot more. It'll be a lot more user friendly. Personally, I think that there will be a lot of really good things that come from this. Another thing that I wanted to look at is some of the enemy balance. So. If you've been playing, you know that there's some enemies that do a ridiculous amount of damage in a short amount of time, and for no rhyme or reason. It's just that's the way it is. So we're going to go through a couple of these, maybe all of them, and just take a look at which ones I feel are the best changes when it comes to this sort of a thing. So the Gloom Screecher Bats, they would come up to you, pause, and then they would have that like AoE cone. Now it's a 50% to 100% duration, which is great. So like their initial burst, I know for some of these bats that were in Lightless Arbor, it would be absolutely devastating. When I was playing a few days ago, I noticed that they were like a top priority kind of a kill. Like anytime I saw them, I would have to rush to them and kill them instantly because their damage was just so high, and it made me feel like, something so small was doing such a large amount of damage. It didn't really make any sense to me at that point. Blood Scorpions are nice to deal less damage because once you got to the area after you met Ulrich and defeated Admiral Harton on the ship, these Blood Scorpions would appear and they would do a lot of extra poison damage. I don't know why they were doing all this extra poison damage, but it's just how it was. So Forged Soldiers are those soldiers you meet at the start of the game. They're the like whirlwinding type, like I don't know, I'm trying to describe them, but basically they're making it so that like their animations are slower. Durations of attacks are longer, so yeah, aim to decrease the pressure to melee characters, right? Because if you were a ranged character, it didn't really matter to you that they were casting these things, floating around, doing their fire warpath ability. So yeah, I think it's going to be good in that regard. Gorgon, the snake thing that had the extra snakes on its head that would shoot the poison bolts. Less damage is always good. This one, I think, is an absolutely massive one. The Light Mage. The attack range is reduced by more than half, which is wonderful because there'd be times when I'd be fighting enemies and these light mages would come up. You wouldn't even be able to see them on your screen, or at least my screen, and they would just leave these circles on the ground. And if you got hit by like 5 of them, it was pretty much like a game over. So it's good that we'll be able to actually see them before they actually cast. That way we can kind of tell ourselves, hey, these guys need to get taken down, kind of a thing. Less fire damage from Osprix Warriors, which is wonderful. So Tundra Stalkers and Ulatari Scavengers are those like cats, those white cats that run around. Obviously, Leap does 17% less damage, and melee attack deals 12.5% less damage, which is wonderful. There were quite a few times that I've been killed on softcore characters by these guys, and it was just kind of shocking to know that like they are listening, they're looking at the data, and it's very kind of cool to see that like their damage is being brought down a little bit. Sacred Bloom, same thing as well. You never really knew where they were attacking you from, so it was kind of nice to know that like, hey, you can actually see these guys now. And they made it so that the arc of the long range attack is more clear as to what direction they're shooting from. There were times when I would be fighting these guys, you'd see the little green circle, or maybe not little, but it would be a green circle on the ground, and I would be running around in a circle looking for them, trying to find out where they actually shot it from. And hopefully this will make it so that, it's easier to see where that shot is coming from, so you can go in that direction, hopefully find him and kill him. Sand Scorpion, same thing with the Blood Scorpion. Same sort of thing. 24% less poison damage, which is wonderful. Scalebane Saboteur. These guys were pretty brutal. They're the guys on top of the bug, and they throw the spears, the javelin ability, and then it lands on the ground and explodes. That's, I think, a very welcome change, considering that there's an extra 0.4 seconds. So almost like a 30% increase to their time, which is great. I think more visual clarity on things like that, not having it be as quick, as fast, is a wonderful thing, a wonderful addition to these sorts of things. Siege Golem, reduce the range of a large arrow attack, which is great. Reduce area of large arrow attack slightly, so a little bit of a increase there for us to kind of get out of the area when their large arrow attack is shot. Solar Archer, bow attack deals 12.5 less damage, which is great. Tracks movement slightly less well before leaping, so you don't have to worry about the Spine Hunter, the Alpha Spine Hunter, kind of like jumping to where you're headed to, as opposed to like jumping to where you were. Spine Hunter Alpha, same thing. Traction movement slightly less well before leaping, reduced damage. That's always great. Stormcrawler Crabs. Now always turn to the target before shooting their lightning beams at the rate of lightning beams has been reduced. So these guys were like the crabs on the ground that would have the gray and white sort of direction. And if you were attacking them, they could attack in all directions. Now it's going to be something like they will turn to the target before they attack, and the rate at those lightning beams being shot has been reduced, which is great. Obviously, Styriax, a few increase in changes here. Flamethrowers deal less damage, deals less melee damage, less fire damage, which is wonderful. Tundra Stalker, these guys reduce size by 30%. So there would be some times when like they would get like enraged, or they would kind of get enraged, and their size would grow like really big, and they would just be this really big cat on the screen. Obviously they thought that these sorts of things were really critical to change, Damage Ice Breath, which is nice. Those guys were one of the few guys that I always kind of made sure to kill first. Reduce Leap. Attack damage, melee attacks reduced by almost half, which is great. Ice Breath has 25% less chance to inflict frostbite each second. So, very welcome change to the Tundra Stalker, I think. These guys were really kind of dangerous in higher corruption, and it's good to know that, like, they won't be as much of an issue. So, Ulatari Scavenger is like the fire cat, pretty much. Reduce size of flame breath, leap attack, melee attacks. All very welcome changes for this, because the Ulatari Scavengers and the Tundra Stalkers seemed like they were a little bit overpowered when it came to that sort of thing. Snake Infection from their Poison Burst deals 25% less damage over the full duration, which is great. Poison Burst really kind of like hurt if you didn't have anything on it that necessarily removed ailments or things like that. This could really kill you. 25% less damage over the full duration is great. Means that it won't be doing like nearly as much damage. Wangari Shaman is great to change. Shield buff range reduced, so they're not going to be sitting on the like edge of your screen casting their shield buff to targets in the middle. They'll have to get a little bit closer, so you can actually see them and then actually try to, go out and kill them. Okay, so next I wanted to kind of go over like what these uniques are, right? They released all of these uniques. They did a whole bunch of changes for all the other uniques. And I just kind of wanted to go over each one just to kind of see like what they could potentially be used for, what skill, what builds they could potentially be used for. So let's jump right into it. I am on the Last Epoch Tools, which is a website created by Dammit. It is a bill or a website that like does a very good job at, I think, really showing like all the new stuff, and it even has a like, this is where I get all my build information from, all the percentages and things like that. So if you have yet to check out this website, I definitely recommend it. It's a very, very cool website created by one person who does it in his off time, and he's currently working on a Grim Dawn tools as well. So go and give him some love. Let him know that you appreciate everything he does. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. So the first one is going to be the Egg of Forgotten. This obviously the item that is going to be on the Nemesis system, where you can swap this out with a unique. Or if not, it'll just change it to a random unique, which is going to be pretty cool. Okay, so Yrun's Penance. Looks like this is going to be either a Beastmaster or a Primalist rather, and also a mage, right? Because gives 100% of increase to cold damage, fury, leap, base damage converted to gold. And it looks like it does Mana Strike. Yeah, 100% Mana Strike base damage converted to cold. So either one of these two, which is great, means that it's like a dual unique. You can use it for both, Primalist, and also use it for Sorcerer, or maybe like a Spellblade or something like that. Okay, next one, Fingers of the Phantom Mire. This one's actually kind of cool. It gives, instead of your Evade, it's replaced by Terrify. You deal more damage to feared enemies, and you have a swiftness ultimately on you at all times, and you're also immune to slow. So this is something that would like be a little bit of a niche build, I think, but I feel like it would be a very useful sort of thing to have if you're, you don't necessarily need the evade, or you don't want the evade, or you want maybe like another ability instead of the evade. This is something that would replace that sort of a thing. Palarus' Sacred Light. I think we looked at this on stream, on Mike's stream, if I'm not mistaken, but basically like a smite kind of a build. Chance to cast smite a melee hit, and chance to cast smite at 2 additional targets when you cast it directly. So possibly something that like you're melee attacking, and then you're also casting it as well, and you're getting these extra bonuses based off of like all of that stuff that you're doing, right? And it's a required level 6, so you can use this at a very low level, which is very exciting. I do like those low-level uniques. They really kind of inspire like different builds to play around and things like that. So, Flight of the Quetzeri. This one we saw also with Mike's stream as well. One evade charge, haste after you use evade, seconds of haste after you use a traversal skill, increased haste effect. All these are wonderful things, I think, considering that evade is a brand new sort of mechanic that we're getting as a player. It's going to make our survivability a lot better because we'll be able to evade out of things instead of having to worry about using like a traversal skill or something like that. All right, Phantom Grip. This one's obviously for Forged Strike and Summon Forged Weapons, but it actually looks really cool. You get plus level to minion skills, which is great. You get increased crit chance, increased mana, and then melee necrotic damage for Forged Weapons. So normally they would just be doing physical damage, I believe, and now you have the option of actually converting it into a necrotic build. And I know there's a lot of items out there now that increase necrotic damage. When you use necrotic damage against an enemy, something happens. This is also very cool too. Stats on your gloves applied to your forged weapons at 64 to 100% effectiveness. So basically, gloves have like a different affix slots that you can put in there. So this could actually make it really, really cool. I'm not sure exactly what I'm thinking when it comes to this sort of a thing, although I do believe that there are some gloves that like increase your necrotic damage when you attack something, or increase like give you a chance to have an extra debuff on the target or something like that, like Death Mark or something. So I think that's gonna be really kind of cool, interesting. Okay, another ring here. This is the Summon Crab Ring. Swiftness, increased armor, minion armor, and all attributes. So this is a crab that gets summoned. Basically just like looks just like a regular crab that you'd find in the open world. And I just think it's a cool addition, right? It's kind of like the Terrify one that we were looking at earlier. Instead of it being gloves, it's now a ring, so you can change the ring to summon a crab instead, which is actually very cool. Orian Sunseal. I'm actually looking to try to get this when it releases, just because of like this one down here, right? Every 10 seconds, if you are above half mana and you cast Sigil of Hope, you cast Sigil of Hope and consume 70 to 80% of its mana cost, which is great. It means that there's like always an uptime on Sigils of Hope, which means that if you go a certain route, you can pretty much always have a 25% bonus to damage, which is, I think, pretty massive. And also considering that like it increases the seconds of Sigil of Hope duration. Normally, Sigil of Hope is 15 seconds, so adding another 12 seconds could potentially mean that it's a 27-second. And then, you'll get at least 2 every single time that you're here. So this is really going to, like, switch things up, I think, when it comes to Sigil of Hope and Paladins using it. And that's what I'm going to play starting out. So hopefully I can grab this ring here and be good. Traitor's Tongue is a weapon, I believe, for rogues. Rogues would use this. Parry chance when equipped in the main hand, and critical strike chance when increase when in the offhand, which is actually kind of cool. Different sort of like usability. You can use it offhand to get more crit strike for maybe a different build, or main hand to get a parry chance if you want to be a little bit more defensive. So I think it's a very welcome change in that regards to adding more build ideas, giving us the option of kind of choosing where we get those extra stats from. Cruelty, it's a relic. It's a sacrifice relic. Basically, minions are automatically sacrificed after 2 seconds. If you have any mana, 53 to 89% of sacrifice's mana cost is consumed. Otherwise, the caster sacrifice deals 80% less damage. Basically like an auto sacrifice, right? Minions can't be stunned. You get extra mana. You get increased move speed. So it's basically like you're running around. Things are getting sacrificed automatically, and they deal damage automatically. So kind of like an auto bomber thinking in a way. Grim Constitution. This one's kind of strange. You cannot gain ward while in combat, although you do get max health gained as ward decay threshold and max health gained as ward per second. So I'm not sure if the ward per second is going to impact this first one, but it does seem kind of cool having like a kite shield. It's a shield. There's not too many shield builds out there, and they will kind of be able to make it so that like your ward and your health kind of scale linearly when you get like ward per second or ward decay threshold rather. So stuff like that will be really cool. This one's actually really interesting. Triboelectra is a static orb wand, and you get a lot of increases to lightning spells. You get more tendrils with static orb. When you evade, you cast static orb for 90% of its mana cost. And when you evade, you transfer all stacks of shock on you to nearby enemies. So there's like, there are sort of items you can use that give you shock, and this is basically like a way for you to have like a burst, right? You cast evade, cast static orb, and transfers all stacks of shock on you to current enemies, which is really nice considering that like there's not too many items out there that do this sort of a thing, that transfer a lot of the debuffs that you have currently. Flames of Midnight is a new one. Evade is replaced by Spirit Step. This looks like something for an Acolyte, for example. You have Swiftness when you use directly use a Fire, Necrotic, or Void skill. Create a Wandering Spirit near the target location. 4-second cooldown for each skill type, so you can have 3 different Wandering Spirits just out and about. 4-second cooldown in between each one, so if you do it once every 2 seconds, basically use a Fire spell, and then 2 seconds wait, use a Necrotic, wait, use a Void skill. You'll basically always have one up, which is kind of cool. Ward gain for each second per active Wandering Spirit. Wandering Spirit's base damage converted to fire, which is wonderful. And then your evade is replaced with Spirit Step. And what Spirit Step does is it swaps places with a target Wandering Spirit. So, like, you might have, like, I don't know, you might, like, use an ability to teleport somewhere, gather up a large group of enemies, use Wandering Spirit over on, like, the outside, and then teleport with that Wandering Spirit, right? Or, like, swap places or something. So, a lot of really cool things, I think, for that, honestly. Monument of Protection, which was the shield that we saw in the opening video. I think this is going to be very cool, considering that, you'll have one shield as an axe on the main hand, a second shield that will be a defensive sort of stat thing. Block chance is going to be absolutely through the roof. I think it's very cool that they're adding this sort of a thing. It's not really, you don't really see this sort of a thing in other games, and I think that's what kind of sets 11th Hour games apart from a lot of the other game developers. Plague Dragon's Tongue, which is a Serpent Strike Summon Locust build, so more of like a Swarmblade type of a build. Chance to summon a Locust on hit with Serpent Strike, because you can use Serpent Strike to sort of like, you can piggyback Serpent Strike with Swarmblade form that will use Serpent Strike whenever you use your main ability, your main attack ability. You get more Locusts, you get more attack speed, increased attack cast and movement speed for Locusts, melee physical damage for Locusts, and 1 to 5 level of poison skills, which is going to be absolutely crazy considering you get 5 more points on this skill, and you get fire resistance, which is like, it's massive. So I think this is going to be really kind of cool when it comes to like Swarmblade builds. Maybe I can actually create a build and not feel like I'm hitting like a wet noodle. Null's Tooth, which is actually going to be Raptor Pack. A lot of people have been waiting for this sort of a thing, so I think it's going to be awesome to have like a Raptor Pack running around with you, like you can have a Wolf Pack running around with you. Obviously, reduced size, reduced damage. There are some drawbacks when it comes to this sort of thing, but all in all, I feel like this will be a pretty cool item. Requires level 64, so it's not immediately available, so you have to wait a few times in order to get it. Aberroth's Command is a specific to a Void Knight. Very, very cool, considering that the Void Cleave no longer has a weapon requirement. Before Void Cleave, you had to have either a two-handed sword or two-handed axe. So the fact that it's a one-handed weapon means you can use a shield, use it offhand, use another weapon, and it makes it instant and no longer a movement skill, which is great. Ravaging Auras created, last an additional 6 to 12 seconds, have 40% void penetration, which is pretty massive. Increased damage over time, increased area for area skills, and more void penetration. So basically just a way for Void Knights to use Void Cleave and not have to worry about it having like a weapon requirement. So Celestial Doom, which is a two-handed staff. This one's kind of strange. Gives you an ability called Doom Pulse. When you directly use a Fire, Cold, Lightning, Necrotic, or Void spell. So basically any kind of spell that's in the game right now, minus physical spell. And, you know, you gain a percent of maximum, percent of mana spent is gained as maximum mana for 500 seconds. So possibly int stackers would want to use something like this to gain as much mana as they can. They hit a certain threshold, they cast an ability, and then, you know, that ability does even more damage, stuff like that. Void spell damage, increased cast speed, so it's basically like a caster weapon. 1 spell damage per 10 max mana for Doom Pulse. So I think it's going to be pretty cool to see what kind of builds come from using this staff. Level 70 requirement, so it is expected to get it at later levels. Sword Catcher, two-handed axe. Let's see, parry chance, melee skills, melee damage for you and your minions, 1% chance to parry, on parry to restore you and random minion to full health, grant frenzy for 5 seconds. So you could possibly have this with like those Beastmaster builds where they only have one companion. This would work pretty well, considering that, you know, you get a 13% parry chance. And on a parry chance, your minion is recovered to full HP, as well as you're recovered to full HP, as well as you get extra, you know, haste and you get frenzy, and then more melee damage when you're frenzied. So I know that Beastmaster and Primalists in general have a good way of giving you frenzy, so this might be very useful for something on that. Black Blade of Chaos, which is a two-handed weapon for a rogue. Basically gives your lethal mirage, it's much faster. Remaining cooldown recovered on melee hit, which is massive. It basically makes it so that your lethal mirage is going to be like a 2-second, 3-second ability. Remaining number of cooldown recoveries resets when you use lethal mirage. So you're attacking, lethal mirage is up, you use it, you know, and then boom, your cooldown's reduced a little bit more. So obviously a lot of extra stats here: lightning penetration, void penetration, lightning melee damage, void melee damage, chance to apply shock, and chance to apply time rot. So there's a lot of really cool, interesting things that are going around with this Black Blade of Chaos. Should be a lot of fun to try out. Okay, Razorfall is a pair of boots for aerial assault. This is going to be for the Falconer. Level of throwing skills, dexterity. Aerial assault's burst of feathers include 2 umbral blades per 30 dexterity, which is like a break point, right? You gain haste, increased throwing attacks every 2 seconds after using aerial assault, so faster attacks, and you get haste, which is allows you to run around faster. Chance to recover 12% of area assault's remaining cooldown time on throwing hit. So basically these two work in tandem with each other, which is actually pretty cool, I think. I have yet to play a Falconer, but I think something like this would encourage me to sort of play a Falconer just to try it out and see how it performs. Stealth, which is a very weird name for a pair of boots, but you know, you get 1 evade charge, you get dodge rating while using evade, increased dodge rating, and level of smoke bomb, which is wonderful for rogues. They need something like that. Enemies that put a lower priority on you, on targeting you compared to your minions and other allies. So this is something you could have with like a minion build. That way your minions are always getting attacked rather than you being attacked. And yeah, I think stuff like this is a nice change when it comes to just all-around health of the game. Event Horizon, I believe we saw this on the display somewhere. Penetration against all resistances with melee damage. When you use a melee attack, yeah, we definitely saw something like this. Basically, like, you're going to be like a very slow boy because you get less movement speed, but you get more melee damage. So you're basically running around like a giant who's extremely slow, and you just slap enemies. So this should be fun with like a Void Knight or Forge Guard or Paladin or something like that. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. Nihilis, which they spoke about in the video, is one of the only ones that gives you a reduced chance to get things. So like, or rather a negative decrease for something like that. So like minus 20% mana regen, minus 10% armor, minus 5 resistances, minus 4% movement speed, right? They haven't really done stuff like this before in the past, and it's kind of cool to see like what they have planned for the future, if these sorts of things work well. Null Portent, which is actually kind of cool. It's not necessarily like, it's basically for any kind of a build, I think. Melee damage leeches health, overkill damage leeches health, increased leech rate, increased health, physical resistance, 1% less damage taken per 2 resistance above the normal resistance cap. So up to 20% less damage taken, which is pretty insane, considering that there's all these other modifiers on here. Overkill damage leeches health, melee damage leeches health. So something like this will be wonderful. Level 81 requirement, so it's going to take a while to get there to get it, but, you know, I think stuff like that is very, very cool. Bane of Winter. Basically, it is going to be a Javelin ability, so for the Sentinel, which is wonderful. Physical penetration, elemental penetration, cast Void Winter Bolt when you hit an enemy with a Javelin or melee attack, up to 3 times per second. Void Winter Bolt critical strike multiplier per 10% uncapped chill chance with melee attacks. So, and generic chill chance does count towards the total, which is great. More Void Winter Bolt damage per 10% uncapped time rot chance with melee attacks. So anything above 100%, I want to feel like is going to be the uncapped, like, chance to get it. Obviously, you know, 100% cold damage taken is physical, which is kind of massive. That means you don't have to build any cold resistance, because all of your cold damage taken is physical. You get more void melee damage, more cold melee damage, and the percentage of added melee damage applies as added spell damage to cold and spell skills or spells. So basically makes it so that, like, if you use cold abilities or use void spells or void abilities, that a percentage of your added melee damage is also added as spell damage. So a lot of cool builds that I think potentially could come from this weapon. It's a level 82 weapon. I don't know why I keep doing that. It's a level 82 weapon, so, you know, you don't have to necessarily worry about getting it early on. It'll be something late game. Infernal Shade, Infernal Dread, or Dread Shade rather. This is for the Acolyte. Scales of Lemniscate, Scales of Lemniscate, I guess. You know, increased minion damage, minion health, increased health. You can only control one shade. Dread Shade has a 30% increased buff effect and 25% increased health decay. 200% chance to apply frailty and slow to nearby enemies, which is great. And casting Infernal Shade grants you your minions damage immunity for 3 seconds. So basically, like, a way to, like, if there's burst happening, and you need to sort of get out of the way quickly, this is a great way of doing that because it provides immunity for all your minions. The Inevitable, which is going to be with a Racing Strike, which is another Void Knight ability. So you get slow and chill immunity, which is massive, no slowing. You get increased movement speed, a lot of that increased movement speed. You cannot be stunned while using Erasing Strike, and you get less damage taken while using Erasing Strike. For those of you who have not played a Void Knight, Erasing Strike is your mastery skill, and you like slam the ground, but there's like an animation that you do. So if you're being attacked and you slam, you could potentially get killed while you're doing it and not have any other sort of way to get out of that. So it's nice to know that like you're taking less damage while using it, right? Seal of Ekkidrasil. Ekkidrasil, yeah, that's how I want to pronounce it. Extra mana, increased mana regen, damage dealt to mana before health, which is crazy. Endurance applies to all damage dealt to mana. So, like, you get reduced damage taken when they're attacking your mana, which is kind of crazy. And a percent chance to take 0 damage when hit, which really coincides with Wall of Nothing, because this also has a chance to take 0 damage when hit. It gives you more endurance threshold, percent of endurance threshold added as ward decay threshold. So these two kind of go hand in hand, a helmet and a body armor. It's going to add a lot of extra sort of like area where you'll be attacked and you'll get hit for 0 damage. And I'm assuming this works for bosses too. So this could absolutely be pretty massive, considering that you'll be at a 20, if you get max rolls, you'd be at a 24% chance. So basically a 1 in 4 chance to take 0 damage when hit, which is kind of crazy. World Splitter, we're almost at the end here. World Splitter is going to be a two-handed axe. Gives a chance to bleed innately, avoid melee damage, increase area for melee skills per 1 mana cost, critical strike chance for melee attacks per 1 mana cost, melee critical strike damage multiplier per 10 max mana. So, like, increased mana regen, you get 1% mana cost, 1 mana cost. Like, all these revolve around, like, having a lot of mana. So World Splitter is going to be something that like you'll be using to potentially build up your mana reserves as high as you can, and then you'll have increased area, increased critical strike chance, and increased critical strike multiplier, which is going to be absolutely pretty cool, I think, honestly, when it comes to like making a melee character. Phase Point, which is a quiver, basically chance to gain Dust Shroud on dodge, so you just stack dodge, chance to gain a black arrow on dodge, and 1 bow void damage per Dusk Shroud when using a black arrow. And you get extra levels to Dark Quiver, which basically summons black arrows. So it's like a black arrow, Dusk Shroud kind of a build that will really kind of like make everything kind of fit very well. And then last but not least, the Harbinger's Needles, which is a 1x1 size. I was kind of curious what it was before, and now I know. It's just like Singularity. And it's basically a way for you to increase your corruption a lot faster, gaining 3 additional Gaze of Oribus. And now we know that Gaze of Oribus will only allow you to consume 4 of the gazes at a time when you defeat Oribus and you have these gazes on you. So this is going to be a way for you to like sort of increase your corruption incredibly higher, right? You don't have to fight endgame bosses 4 times in a row in order to get the maximum. Now you just have one of these, kill the endgame boss, gives you 3 extra, so you have 4 when you kill him, and then you go kill Oribus, and you're already at like 150 corruption, which is actually kind of cool. So but yeah, I just kind of wanted to go through like all the different types of uniques. I thought there were a ton that came out, and there weren't any necessarily like postings on them. There weren't anything like this, for example, that showed kind of what they were. So I just wanted to make a video kind of going over all the different uniques. And yeah, I'm very excited for a couple of these. Null Portent is one that I'm very excited for. Nihilis is also a very good one as well. Let's see here. I'm very excited to try out Aberroth's Command, even though I probably won't be making a Void Knight at the start. I'm very excited for Monument of Protection, and also very excited for this one here, Orion Sunseal, just because of the Sigils of Hope. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. If there's a unique that really stands out to you guys, if there's something that you think you're gonna try to go for at the start, maybe if there's a build idea that you have based off of one of these uniques, let me know. Tell me what you guys think. Appreciate you guys watching. Hit that subscribe button if you think I earned it today for you. And make sure you like the video. And we'll see you guys in Atera on July 9th.